One of the subjects that we have to cover today, somebody said to me this morning, is it really necessary that we do this every year? And by law, some of these subjects are not required each year, but I'll let you in on a little secret. We just decide to do them, and so that we know every year, at one point of the year, everyone has had the subject. So that's kind of why we do them. Plus, they're important. You know, I think safety sometimes is kind of laughed at like something we have to do, but it's really something we should do. Harassment is covering, for those of you that may not have had this, it's usually something we try to laugh about and joke about, but it's really the most serious part of our training today, because it is part of the interaction of your employees each day. And most of the harassment subject covers you and your co-workers. We all know and joke about maybe the public harassing us, and whether out there in the public or the public's coming to us here at the office, that type of harassment. That's really not what we're talking about. We're really talking about what your daily co-workers in your interaction with each other, and how that we should be respectful to each other, respect each other for who they are and what the job they have to do, and to avoid any kind of harassment. Harassment takes all sorts of different faces, from sexual to workplace violence, which we would call a hostile environment. And always remember, too, that a hostile environment or harassment means something different to every one of you. Some people we may say are more sensitive. Others may not express their feelings, so you don't really know you've done damage. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that and how to get through the process if it is to happen. But the big thing about this is, let's not let it happen. Let's prevent this harassment through a little bit of education today. These are the things that we'll cover in our short presentation. To begin with, we all need to know that, and there is a little bit of a test at the end, that it is illegal in all forms. Harassment in all forms is illegal by the federal law and the civil rights amendments that took place many years ago. We have the right as an employee to work in a non-hostile environment, and we have the right to be protected from harassment. And in our policy handbook, or our policy manual that the town puts out, there is specific language there that talks about harassment, what you do if it is to occur, and what the consequences if you are the one who has been reported in harassment. You pretty much are responsible not only for avoiding that type of behavior or harassment, but you're also responsible for reporting it to the authorities if it happens to you. You also hold some responsibility to your coworkers. If you feel that you're uncomfortable either with the environment that they're creating in your department, or at the break table, or wherever it may be, you are responsible to express to them that you're not comfortable with it, whether it's sexual harassment or it's any kind of harassment, or just making you feel uncomfortable. Your first responsibility is to approach that person and to say, you know, I'm just not comfortable with that, and I'd like you to cut it out. So the actual definition of harassment is important to know because, again, it takes so many different forms. It is actually the attempt to control, influence, or affect your career, job, or in exchange for sexual favors. I always use the example of Congress because whenever this makes the headlines that a congressman or a senator has been found out, basically, that this goes on in the workplace, it just kind of brings to mind that, yes, we see famous people who get caught, if you will, in this type of behavior, but it certainly can happen at any level. It's an act that creates a hostile or offensive work environment. Basically something that you encounter each day that you really don't want to get up and go to work. You really love your job, you really love working for the town, but you know, I'm not going to face this again today. I just can't take this between me and either it could be a group of people or you feel like an outsider or it's one-on-one. So it can happen employee to employee, third party, as listed here, contractors, clients, or customers that maybe come through the door. And it can happen between management and employees. All the things that come into this is, again, the many forms of harassment can be something teasing you about your age. And I think we're probably all guilty of that, especially those of us who are a little older. You know, you take the ribbing about the gray hair or the you know, the old guy, and you know, some of my guys are smiling over there now. We do that quite often, and it's always done in fun. It really is, I hope.
Sorry.
Yeah. That's my sincere hope. But it's a really good example of harassment that goes on each day. And a little later on, we're going to see some slides that are going to talk about, you may think that it was innocent enough, but that particular person, like me, will go home and cry about that every night when I get teased about my age, just so you know. But it really can hit home with somebody that you won't see that. You won't either see it in their body language, or they may not approach you and say, you know, you really need to cut that out. It's really hitting home and I don't like it. Could be a physical characteristic, could be a disability of theirs. Not only a physical disability, but a mental disability or something. They may have a learning disability. They may have inability to communicate clear with you. It can be race, ethnic, religion, or sexual orientation, which we see in the news a lot these days, and we're all using the word politically correct. Well, it's really not politically correct. It's just the right thing to do, is to respect people for who they are, what they are, their lifestyle, and who they are as an employee. Some of the behaviors can be physical, verbal, or just mental. And we'll go over a little bit of that. I'll let you read the slide. I don't have to repeat some of these words. I get red-faced when I say some of these words. So, but basically, I would have to, if I had to give it a percentage of what goes on, I would say verbal is the greatest offender, where we use our words to either hurt somebody's feeling or we do it not intentional. We say something like the lady said this morning, ooh, I wish I could bring that back, because I really didn't mean it. You know, my words got away from me. So these are places where one-on-one with you and a fellow employee can be, you know, an apology. It's like, yeah, I really didn't mean that, I'm sorry. That can go a long way. Physical, touching, holding, grabbing, whatever. Those folks do happen, and again, they're usually innocent, but you really do need to, in this day and age where there's so much publicity about these things going on, it's in the mindset of each other. And you may say, oh, you know, the guys are out back and we're having a good time joking or maybe telling some off-color jokes, but you may have somebody, it doesn't have to be a female, that's offended by it. Could be anyone. You just don't know. Verbal, again, the jokes, the language. Most people are offended with poor language in the workplace or in public especially. And you can think, again, that what you stood around in a group by the old water cooler trick, you know, where 2 or 3 of you are by the water cooler talking about somebody, you can either be overheard, or you may not even be talking about that person, but that lone person might get the indication that they're talking about me, or they're not including me in their conversation. So things can get out of hand. Gestures, emotion, leering, leaning over somebody's desk. And the other thing, too, that I used to experience in the workplace that were posters, and, you know, I was manager of a shop full of 40 men. And you can imagine the calendars, the posters and the things that go on, because it wasn't a public place, it was a private shop. And so it was just rampant everywhere. And that was long before the days of Facebook and computers. It was posters that were very, graphic, or calendars, and it was just not seen in the workplace now, but those are things that used to go on. So some of the examples that we can talk about that can be given as harassment, listed here. Comments, usually words or degrading words about an individual. And again, it does not have to be race or gender. It can be disability, or it can be the way somebody looks that may appear to be funny, and it's not funny. Hostile environment, basically, and is really the non-intent to harass, but to create an environment that, again, somebody doesn't want to come to work, or they're uncomfortable, or they feel left out. That doesn't mean that you have to be buddies with everyone, but it means that you have to show a little respect to your coworkers as a department, and to not cut them out of every conversation intentionally. So here's an example. Ray puts up a graphic calendar in his office. The new calendar makes Ralph uncomfortable. So again, doesn't have to be gender. And the key here is that he made him known that it was uncomfortable to him, and he refused to take it down. And so a little later on, we're going to see the results of that. A female truck driver repeats, here's repeated comments about her physical characteristic whenever she's in the garage. Mark is embarrassed when they chat about their sexual encounters, even though he has told them it offends him. So here, again, is the key, that this can all be headed off with a little communication to let, if you're the one that's offended, to let the others know that this bothers you. That's your responsibility. But having said that, we know it's difficult to do that. If you're uncomfortable with somebody, you're certainly not going to be comfortable walking up to them and telling that. So the next step would be to go to somebody else. Read your policy, it's in our policy, and take care of yourself. Monitor your own conduct first. Make sure you're not the one causing the behavior. Take a real good hard look at what you do each day, how you talk about people, how you treat people. Make sure you're not a part of it. Speak up when your feelings, and make your feelings known. Now, if you, again, are not comfortable with that, you go to your supervisor. Your immediate supervisor is your first step. And say, look, this is what's going on. I'm not comfortable with this. I wish you would step in, see if you can put it down. And it's a responsibility of management to take that somewhere. Either take it to the person who's the offender, or if that doesn't work, take it to their supervisor and work your way up. This is a big one. Uh-oh. Okay. I should have gone back instead of doing that. Hey, did I do it? Is that the one?
F5.
I'm going to go back. Pardon me. Yeah, now we're at reporting procedure. Here we go. This is the dangerous one. Even though that particular person seems to be enjoying what's going on and partaking in either a group discussion about somebody else, or it's something that, about race, or it's about gender, or it's a bad joke or something, or they're sharing an experience that, even though it appears that particular time that there's no problem, that individual days later, months later, legally can come back and say, you know what, I really didn't like that. And so you went home thinking that it was innocent enough, you continue the behavior, and next thing you know, you're getting a report that you have been part of harassment. That's why I say that's the dangerous part, is that it's not immediately known to you, so you continue the pattern of harassment particularly, and then before you know it, you get a call. From HR or your superior. So if you do report a complaint, reporting your complaint, it must be investigated promptly, which can be anything from just a discussion. Find out truly, did that person harass you? It can be a full-fledged investigation that may end in some discipline. And the other thing that you need to know is that you are protected from retaliation. So if you think you're being a rat or you think you're being a snitch, you are protected against that, and you cannot be held against you for reporting it. Basically a whistleblower act. Go to your department head, and then eventually it will go to the town manager if it can't be resolved. And then it can be brought to the attention of the town council, who is ultimately our boss. I don't think you want it to go that far. This is our policy. If you are found engaging in, after the appropriate investigation in sexual harassment or any harassment, subject to discipline. So, little quiz. True or false? True. Sexual harassment is a federal offense. That is true. Sexual harassment is unwelcome, harmless, and illegal.
False. False.
It is unwelcome, harmful, and illegal. Deciding cases of sexual harassment doesn't matter if the alleged harasser didn't intend to do it. Anyone who participates in an investigation cannot experience retaliation. Sure? Yeah, for sure. Hostile environment occurs when supervisors give raises in exchange for sexual favors. Has that ever happened? Don't. I'm easily embarrassed. I told you, don't say that. No, false. A hostile environment occurs when offensive images or objects are displayed. So there is a difference between harassment and hostile. We are being recorded for training purposes, so we're kind of buzzing through these to make sure that you get all the information. Then we can do questions at the end. So does anyone have any questions for regarding harassment? And no jokes. That was good. I appreciate that. All right. Thank you very much.